All right, welcome everybody. I am Jack Lackey, your DAC president. Aaron Lofton is joining us tonight, your DAC vice president. We have a very short agenda, not necessarily a short meeting, but we are going to be doing some DAC structure work focusing on recruiting and membership as we head into that season. Got some slides to walk you through for present condition, present process, and where we're looking for some input. And we'll do a breakout room and then wrap it up. Very short agenda for tonight. Aaron is going to walk us through an icebreaker to get us started tonight. So Aaron, why don't you take that and run?
Start by getting off of mute. I did dump it into the chat. So I would ask, and actually so far, you guys, I think we've got enough people. We could probably do individual responses pretty fast if you can answer it. What was your favorite childhood book in the name of National Storytelling Day? What was your favorite childhood book?
I was a big fan of Laura Ingalls Wilder.
I was gonna say, Lori, I'm gonna second that one. That's what got me reading chapter and series books. Totally sucked in.
I had a series too. I devoured the Hardy Boys mystery books.
Those were good too. And Nancy Drew.
Yep, I think I even dipped into Nancy Drew too.
I would probably have to go Just So Stories, Rudyard Kipling. My mom and I did not live together growing up, but she would record herself reading them on video or on cassette tape and then mail me cassettes of her reading them.
Oh, that's great.
They're called Just So Stories.
Oh my gosh, well, these kinds of questions, I have such a terrible long-term memory. And I read all the time as a kid. So I was going to give a funny response of like a book that I loved as a kid that I've read to my kids, The Monster at the End of This Book with Grover.
Oh.
But that's not like a series. Or
No, there's no right answer.
Okay.
There's no right answer.
I loved Anne of Green Gables in terms of like series of very similar to Little House on the Prairie, but I'll go with The Monster at the End of This Book.
Okay, and there's no pressure. Like people do not need to feel like forced to respond. But if you're struggling, and to be fair, I also, had a little lead time on this. So feel free to drop those in the chat as they strike you. And with that, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Great. Give me just 1 minute here. Hopefully that is shared now. Are you seeing my screen with the light bulbs? Great. So tonight's agenda item is DAC recruiting and membership. Want to take you to another memory, hopefully. And I'm not advancing. There we go. We shared this a few months ago. These were our Aaron and my guiding principles, what we have a vision for the DAC. And what we're talking about tonight really relates to 3 areas. One is succession planning up in the upper left. Have a succession plan, a succession model for leadership and the subcommittees. On the right, self-sufficiency, we want to drive recruiting for the board's approval. And that is geared toward needs analysis. What roles do we need to fill? What expertise can we bring into the DAC and actively recruit to therefore, on the bottom right, add value and build a stronger DAC committee? So those are the concepts or the pretext, if you will, on why we are hitting this as a leadership group. The ins and outs of membership, this is a crash course. This is described in the bylaws. There are some statutory requirements here, but going left to right on the top half, these are current minimum membership requirements for our DAC. We have to have a minimum of 1 community member. I believe I'm it. No, Jessica is also a community member. I transitioned from parent to community last year. Minimum of 1 district teacher, minimum of 3 parents, a minimum of 1 administrator, and then the nondescript appropriate number of classified staff. And we definitely lean on them as resources to help us get our job done. That is described as practicable membership. If you look in the center, that's how we get our DAC. And practicable means really across demographics and geographics. So free and reduced lunch, disabilities and abilities, representing those communities, race and ethnic backgrounds, making sure that we represent those communities as well. And really it's to the level that is practicable, and that's open to interpretation as well. So some basic rules regarding membership. Parents must outnumber the next largest group, which I think is good rule to have. So a minimum of 3, but in any case, if there were 4 teachers, we would need 5 parents minimum. The Board of Education may fill vacancies midterm. There's a biannual appointment of members. So when you join, you are in for 2 years. We handcuff you to this committee. There are 3 2-year terms before requiring a 1-year break. And actually, Aaron and I are close enough to reaching the 6-year term limit that succession planning is really high on our agenda next year and the year after before we do have to take a break. And then the Board of Education appoint, in our case, liaisons that are non-voting. That would be Jamie and Lori that join us each meeting. Any questions around that? Any questions or comments? All right, our current process in a nutshell, we have membership renewals. That is you, if you're participating tonight. Email went out last week asking about your intentions for next year. That also went out to previous year members to gauge interest in returning to the group for next year. There's also recruiting. Those are the new folks that would join the group from various avenues. Then there are recommendations made to the board in the springtime. That is by way of a document. It's a roster and recommended committee assignments for each person that then turns into the board appointments. The official approval are the appointments, and that gives us next year's DAC team. So that's what we're looking at now. Any questions or comments around that? All righty. So our current recruiting sources, we get district admin referrals. So people that the district comes in contact with. Primarily that was Tracy in years past. She ran point on this group to pull it together years ago and was instrumental in getting members to join. We can also get Board of Education referrals. Any board member can refer people to our group. We do get a couple of applications each year directly off the website from people who are interested. We do recruiting, or we will, I should say. We were scheduled to do it last year at the 5-Star Leadership Academy, which is where I came from. That was my path to DAC. And by way of the SAC work that we will be doing as part of our statutory work, so we can recruit that way. And then tonight we're looking for other avenues of recruiting from you all. We'll do that as one of the questions in a breakout. Any questions or comments there? All right, you guys are making it easy. So the selection process, this is my interpretation. This is what we're focusing on tonight. This is one of the areas. And as we think of recruiting as a pipeline, like a sales pipeline for a company, we have a mix of DAC interests. What is it that we need as a group from new membership? And what interests do the candidates have? Why are they coming to the DAC themselves? And how can we best capitalize on both of those? So at the top of our list this year is identifying any skills gaps that we have within the group. And a lot of that will be more toward the DAC structure, running the group in a self-sufficient manner. So getting organized, you know, as an example, someone who is an HR manager, HR professional in their day job and doesn't mind doing that on occasion in a volunteer basis might own recruiting or running points on recruiting and screening candidates that way. We need to consider the representation within Adams 12. You know, we've got 50 some odd schools and the geography with each of those. And so that is a consideration in the process. And then it's an avenue of learning. All of us came here with some level of knowledge about the school district and the subcommittees that we serve on. And this is an avenue of learning. How do we temper that with getting the work done? And so we'll hit that tonight as well. And again, looking for any other sort of filters or checkpoints that we should be observing as a group, as a community to further the effort of recruiting. We will get a chance to talk about that in the breakout, but do you have any questions or comments on this slide?
Jack, I have a question about the parent-teacher role.
Yeah.
Can a teacher come on as just a parent, or is there always a conflict of interest with that?
You know, that is a fantastic question that I do not know the answer to, but I will get it.
I feel like recollecting conversations with Phil, while it's not super clear, for the sake of appeasing the lawyer, his preference would be that parent be purely parent and not also staff.
Yeah, and actually, I think those are some of the things that would actually be really helpful to talk about. Honestly, in terms of this space, how some of those different roles maybe play out and the different perspectives when you do have overlapping essentially stakeholder roles. So Lisa, if you're willing, as we kind of go through some of the breakouts, if you are willing to kind of put on some of those hats, that would be really helpful as well.
I was just thinking too of people like thinking in recruitment of parents that are teachers that, you know, have just been thinking that they would want to take a role, an active role in the district, but then if they're teachers also then, but they would want to do it as a parent. So it's like, oh, well, kind of ties your hands.
Well, and let's maybe think about maybe what some of those options could look like. And one of the first ones, honestly, that's coming to mind is we're really needing to bolster some of our SAC efforts. And that would really remove, especially across schools. So, sorry, percolating on how some of that might work.
Great question, thank you. Any others? All right, I'm going to turn the next slide over to Erin, and this is focused on some recruiting options for the coming year, given our current scenario. So Erin, why don't you take that?
Great. So I think, and I'm not sure, whoever may have been in my group last week when we started this conversation, I was trying to think about what might some of our scenarios look like. You know, while things are, I would say, maybe smoothing out a smidge for the 2021 school year, I don't know that we're quite at a place where we could actually define it as stable. And I think there's still a bit of unknown as we're heading, across the summer and into next school year. And so trying to create some potential space or flexibility around what might some different flexibilities in our thinking of a cycle look like, to balance all the needs that we have, some of which Jack just described about, what we want our membership to look like, what sort of representation and sort of recruiting and screening process. And so how do we best meet all of those goals, and what might some variable sort of recruiting timelines look like? So one is around this sort of, hey, we go for it, we acknowledge the ambiguities. We do like, hey, we're still figuring some stuff out. We're going to do some planning over the summer, and we'll come back in the fall with more concrete information. There's definitely, advantages and some potential risks with that scenario. We could kind of pause, get our ducks in a row a little bit more, and do, once the fall school year comes maybe into a little clearer focus about where folks are landing, maybe then we initiate a recruiting process, and again, get our things moved up and maybe have a tighter timeline. A third consideration is maybe a much more sort of selective, tight process through administrators. So kind of trying to tap into who we know are active, committed parents who could step into a sort of a DAC commitment and a DAC role, but essentially look to administrators as a way to kind of do some of that bigger screening or recommendation. So those are, I'm going to say, 3 considerations that we could pursue, or quite frankly, some combinations. But again, just trying to get some options on the table about how we might pursue a membership path for this coming year. So that's just a high level overview. Clearly, there are a lot of details to be worked out. But that's where the thinking is so far.
All righty, thank you. So in a couple minutes, we are going to break into 2 rooms. I think I'm counting 10 of us.
9. Yep.
So we've got a Jamboard set up. I'm going to paste that in the comments. But there's 6 questions. I think we'll go 30 minutes and check in and see if that's enough time. That's about 5 minutes a question. So feedback on those potential models that Erin just went through, the 3 models. The second question is, how can the SAC initiative work that we're already doing this year align with recruiting? What are some ideas around that? Actually touches the third one that Erin just mentioned. What skills do you see that are needed within the DAC currently? Anything goes here. If there's some obvious low-hanging fruit that we're missing, we'd love to hear from you. There are 2 pages of questions, so be sure to click through. The 4th question, what sources of recruiting are missing or we could develop more? What could the selection process look like in the future? And then comments on a junior membership year. So when we talk about adding value and the ability to provide an environment of learning for community members who want to engage by way of the DAC, Erin and I were tossing around the idea of a junior membership year, for lack of a better term, maybe an apprenticeship. I think that was actually Erin's first choice of words. That would be the first year for the general public. Of course, if we got a former DAC president from another big school group, school district, that would maybe not apply. but set up a program where they would observe and maybe participate on a limited basis on each of the subcommittees that we have to ramp up and get comfortable with the inner workings of the DAC before being thrust into an official role. Not that you can't, but that you have another avenue of learning. So we want you to kind of discuss that and comment on it. Let me
DAC,
make sure. Yes.
I was going to say with that question, again, that was just sort of an idea in response to some of the things that we've heard from folks. So again, would definitely appreciate feedback, or if there's some other ideas or recommendations that you have about, you know, what it's sort of a supportive onboarding process, education, sort of like that background building and education process. If you have other recommendations that are related, please include those there as well. So again, it's meant to be sort of a conversation starter, not a, you know, closed-ended yes, no decision. So please see it as such.
All right, Jean, I think we are ready to break out. We'll go 30 minutes.
Tech fun tonight, hmm?
it's our main group again. They must still be working.
Lori, did your son go back to school in person?
Yes.
Is he enjoying that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
How about your kiddos?
Yes, they're back 4 days a week. They actually really like the Wednesday, like asynchronous day. So they're happy
Mhm.
that that is going to stay.
Yeah. I don't think for next year, though.
Is it not?
I don't think so.
Mm.
It was a treat for this year.
Yeah, they love it. It's kind of like a pajama day.
Yeah. I'm glad he's back too. It's just better that way.
Yeah, some socialization.
Mm-hmm.
Jack,
Okay.
you're muted, I think.
Yep. Every meeting, got to happen at least once.
It's got to happen once. Thanks, Dave. I was talking away. I was mentioning that Michelle joined us after her board meeting, so I talked her through quickly what we were doing. I'll share the PowerPoint later. Erin, would you take a few minutes and walk us through your group's highlights?
Glad to. You know, I was a little concerned about the 30 minutes, but we used it well. I thought we came up with some good things, and I'm typing up the last sticky right now. Okay, so I'm gonna go. If you guys are okay, I'm not gonna get into the tech of sharing the screen. I'm just gonna do a high level overview. First, on sort of some connected ideas related to recruiting models. I think there was some definite concern around this idea. We sort of generally bucketed under pandemic fatigue. We think that there's potentially some strong interest in there, but in terms of district staff, parents, knowing sort of what's on the horizon for folks and really wanting to give people a sort of a breath over the summer, really wanting to consider sort of that that impact and sort of ability of folks to commit. There was a recommendation of doing a combo of models 2 and 3, which seemed to resonate pretty well. Definitely some acknowledgement around FSLA as a recruiting ground, but also acknowledge how pandemic fatigue is impacting that group as well. Larger acknowledgement around essentially the pipeline that a stronger SAC initiative could lead to in longer term. And then we had some interesting conversation around the skills needed. So I would say a couple interesting highlights. Definitely around sort of representation and aligning to sort of our membership, but then also how do we get the differences of perspective across the district and some potential different avenues for getting that. I think one of the other ones that was really important to consider is maybe not just hard skills, but given where we are with the DAC and sort of toning down our expectations on content expertise, what are maybe some of maybe more the attributes that we would like to highlight? Willingness to learn, levels of commitment, some of those, critical thinking skills, and bringing those to our processes and our work. So those are some highlights from page 1. Looking at, so again, just some different potential pipelines for recruiting. Recommendation around, we didn't get a whole lot into a selection process because we were honestly a little bit more focused on sort of timeline and sort of perspectives and what that might look like. And then spent a bit of time on sort of this idea of, and I'm going to use, Jamie had a great term, red shirt, a potential, like what might a red shirt year look like? Also some ideas sort of connected to recruiting. So rather maybe than like a whole junior year, but maybe host a meeting. So you think you want to be a DAC member? Like, how do we, manage expectations and allow some of that conversation to happen? So that would be super highlights. Team 1 on group 2. Is there anything from our conversation that you felt was like particularly poignant or like that I glossed over in my synopsis?
I don't think you glossed over anything. The kind of the last thing we thought was a novel way to try to recruit is, as the DAC gets projects like the interact more productively with SACs and helping SACs, or the UIP simplification process, advertising those projects themselves. The DAC still controls them, but advertising, are there folks out in the system that are interested in just working on that project? Getting them in the door potentially that way, and then that being a way to sort of springboard them into the DAC potentially, and getting them involved in a way that they feel like they're contributing. So then they might be interested in engaging in the full DAC in that red shirt year, so to speak.
Yeah, that definitely, I don't know, definitely resonated with me. I think actually other theme, and this was actually one of the first comments in our group that I think we just need to acknowledge, honestly. DAC work is a little unique and it's not for everybody. Like, it takes a special person to want to do this on their free time. So I think, like, in all of this, we kind of need to acknowledge that.
All right, thank you, Erin. I'm a big proponent of selling the job exactly as it is. Do you love crunching data in your free time? Right, market right to those people. I will run points. I will invite team 1 to jump in and offer color commentary where needed. We felt like the administrative avenue for recruiting would be good as leads for the DAC to pursue, but not as additional workload for them to actually do the recruiting and spend time on that. That was an important distinction. The SAC initiative, inviting ourselves to their meetings, when there's a good time throughout the year to talk about what the DAC is, what the DAC does, and maybe drive membership that way. There's a good idea, I thought, about the open office hours. If we put that out to the SAC community, whether it's us as a resource or around membership, that there would just be a set time for people to drop in and ask questions, maybe virtually. When we talk about skills, right away, it wasn't the hard skills that came up, but the ability to commit. So that's the upper right sticky commitment to attendance and to the workload versus specific skills. And I think that's, again, how we present it. Hard skills, communications and publicity. I think I saw that on team 2. And project management was also on team 2. And then near and dear to Jessica's heart is learning programs where we develop, ramping up, onboarding, coaching, those sorts of things, people with those skills that can help us create those programs. So that was very useful for me. Sources of recruiting that might be missing. We kind of jumped around between this one and the junior membership year. But something as simple as an email, which any of us that came through the Leadership Academy, that's how we were notified of the opportunity. And it resonated very quickly and appropriately for those of us that responded. And so maybe the same thing would happen with the DAC if we got the district to send that out. There was some talk around young adults, recent grads, people in teaching programs that might end up in the district to get a younger community. And then along the lines of the junior membership, maybe getting high school seniors. That was another question that came up. Jamie, that I will get the answer to. Lori was in my group about whether high school students can be on the DAC. or what it would take to change that if we felt that was the way we wanted to go. So some good ideas there. The selection process, again, it was more about the level of commitment that was needed and expected, and communicating that through the process. We talked about what could be in future years where maybe we had full capacity and we were in a position of turning people away. You know, a guy can dream. But as part of that, maybe a letter of reference that would come with the application, and the caveat that if we make the process too difficult, it could turn people away. So there was a balance there. The junior year, I think we got to a place of mentoring over a junior year, and matching people up, like member to like member, whether it be a parent to parent, you know, community member to community member, or UIP person to UIP person, and being that safety net to ask the questions we all might have been afraid to ask in year one. The visitation night I thought was fantastic too. Just literally invite people ahead of the recruiting season to come observe a DAC meeting. Might be better suited for in person, but I thought that was a fantastic idea to kind of try before you buy. How did I do, team one? Anything else you'd like to add?
Great job. Perfect summary.
Okay, well, it wouldn't be a recruiting effort if we didn't try to recruit. If any of this work, this organization, this planning, the actual recruiting process, if any of that resonates with the members, we are looking for assistance, whether on a temporary basis to get us through the summer, or long-term, but we will certainly take volunteers. Please reach out to me or Aaron if this is striking a chord with you. We could really use the assistance to advance this effort. It's time, it's timely, and it's really important to us for the future of the group. Aaron, do you have any comments before we wrap up for the night? We're going to cut you all loose early.
I don't think so. I think maybe a little nudge for anybody if you've not yet responded to Jack's email. I'm not quite sure what our final numbers ended up looking like, but just to help us do the planning and kind of having a sense of where we're at. This is not about shame. Again, just like we need the data to be able to make informed decisions moving forward. So it's super helpful. And then again, hopefully the meetings are good pace. You guys are feeling engaged, giving some good input, and we've got definitely a full several meetings before our board presentation on the 19th. So we definitely have a bit of work ahead of us, but looking forward to it. And thank you all for your time tonight. So that's, I guess, just expression of appreciation. Thank you.
I will second that. Our next meeting is Wednesday, May 12th. Erin is most likely running point that whole meeting, so I will thank her in advance. I will be out of town and unavailable, but we'll be getting her set up to win that night. All right, well, with that, we will adjourn.
One thing,
yes.
May 12th is
Mountain
Range graduation, so Jamie and I will be otherwise occupied.
Yes, we were. Lori, that was definitely on the radar. So we weren't going to do big topic, but probably more some revisiting of previous topics. So glad to send a summary. But again, knowing that some of our district staff and that you and Jamie were both going to be, navigating graduation stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, the expected agenda that night is to review the two special projects and the deliverables for the next week. So if there is a meeting for the two of you to miss, it might be that one. All right.
Unless, of course, there's a torrential downpour. Don't say that.
No, the kids need that. They need
to say you put it into space so it won't happen, Lori.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, best wishes in the final push here of the school year.
Thanks, guys.
you.
Good night.
Have a great night.
Night.